Without further ado, David Mann.
Hey, John, thanks. Hi, everybody. Hey. What I'm here to talk to you about is how to organize material so it tells the best story that you have to tell about your business, all right? The problem I see, like I say, is disorganization, not very fluid delivery, and though it might feel good to the person speaking, it doesn't always come across that way and doesn't always engage audiences at the end. That's the goal, right? You want to engage the audience to engage with you as the business owner. So that's what we're going to talk about today, how to tell your story in an effective way to get engagement from an audience. Everybody want to learn about that? A little bit? Do ya? Okay? All right, great. By the end of tonight, well, I'll give you lots of information I'm going to go through here. It's things that you can absorb. If you come to the workshop tomorrow, we can actually have a chance to work on it, and you can actually try some of the things out. All right. The more you can engage people to imagine what you're saying, the better. People, remember this, people do not pay attention to what you say. They pay attention to what they see. They have to see it in their mind, and now we live in a culture where we want to show them an actual photograph, but you can't always show them a photograph, so using your words to create a visual picture in their mind is just about as good, in some cases I would argue better, than seeing a picture with their eyes. But if you speak in language that's not visual, the language of storytelling is visual language. It makes you visualize and see it. We talk to little kids in stories. We read them stories. You read a novel, you're visualizing all that stuff. That's visual territory. If you speak in conceptual abstractions, they can't visualize it and they can't engage with it when they can't visualize it because they're not listening to what you say. They're waiting for you to say something that they can see, okay? A show like Ray Donovan or Breaking Bad or Sons of Anarchy, you're more or less following the primary character only, like you would be in Hamlet or Macbeth or something. And the whole view is from like Walter White's point of view. You have other characters, but it's really, you feel like it's his story. Mad Men was Don Draper's story with a lot of other supporting characters. You see what I'm saying? That's really effective for getting people to buy in because they're feeling the journey along with the main character, like you say, the tragic journey sometimes. You can do all of this in any story, even if it's only 2 minutes long. Those are epic stories that take 5 or 6 seasons to tell, but you can do it in a couple minutes if you have the factors together. Everybody knows any story really is a character or characters who go through an event and undergo change. That's the basic building blocks of a story. Characters experience something that changes them. When you tell a story about your business, like I told the stories about my guys that I work with, make me care about the characters, have them go through something, and then they're changed. And in the case of a business story, you want, of course, the solution over here to be something you were involved in. So you can see many triangles up here, can't you? Yeah. But technically, a triangle consists of 3 lines. And so you do not see any actual triangles up here. You're always imagining at least one of the lines. And a story works the same way. Leave things out so the audience can imagine them in their mind, okay? This is a great metaphor for stories. So I could take away that, and you still see a triangle with no lines, right? You clearly see a white triangle in the middle there, because those 3 things are arranged just so for you to allow to be seen. If I take those, imagine those are story details. And I take those story details, if they're arranged like this, you see the story in your mind. But if I arrange my story details wrong, same details arranged wrong, what is it? It's like Pac-Man at night. If I have way too many story details that are not arranged in any particular cohesive manner, I'm not letting a story emerge. More detail does not a better story make. Better detail in a better place makes the better story, okay? So you want the details to release the story into the imagination of the listener, which means often leaving things out and being very careful about what you leave in. The subtext carries much more weight than the text. What is felt like you probably mean by your inflection will carry way more weight than what you're actually saying very often. But yet we load up presentations with a huge amount of words and text and content and then often deliver it in about the same flatline tone like this. You've heard these kind of presenters many times, especially an hour in. We're now getting into like almost no inflection at all. And if you're in the Midwest, it's really bad because they're not even articulating anything. It's just going like this. The lips don't even move in the Midwest. It's like we're all so cold, you know. So I love coming out here because people actually express themselves. But professional lines of work tend to get into this flatline monotone, which is denying the audience subtext. It's really difficult to figure out what you mean by what you're saying if there's no vocal inflection at all. There must be up and down and pauses for us to get inside it and figure out how does it apply to us, what does it mean, do you care, should I care, you know, that's the subtext. And then finally, where do you put your hands? These two appendages out here that are so useful in ordinary life for lifting things and eating and, you know, carrying things. All of a sudden you stand in front of an audience and try to give a speech, and they become your worst enemy. They can, if you're not confident with them. So people will flay them around, ring them, stick them in their pockets the whole time, play with stuff like this, or jam them behind their back. So things happen, weird things happen with the hands if you don't have like a parking spot for them. So I say, you can do this, the infomercial. This is your 3 a.m. consolidate your credit by calling 1-800-555. But it does work. It's a nice little kind of place to put your hands if you really don't know what to do with them. Just this little thing here. You've seen it a million times. It looks a little formal, but it's okay because look, your fingers are just lightly touching like this. So if you feel the need to gesture, you can just gesture, and then now I'm done gesturing and I need to park my hand somewhere, they just go back here. And if you don't move them around, they will disappear from the picture. People are not watching your hands. But if you start to do this, now this is part of the picture, part of the story, and they're watching it. Same thing with light contact. This, just kind of, I can come out and gesture anytime and go back like just free gesturing. But if I start to white knuckle it down here, now you're going to watch this and it's going to be, you know, bad. Talking hands is just if you're confident and you can just always be using your hands, you're just a dynamic person with a really physically connected way to deliver, great. But if you do this one, you got to commit all the way. You can't be like yeah, I'm that good, except now I don't really have any gestures for this part. And I'm just going to talk and the hands will just be in. People really do this. And then now I got something that I can gesture and they kind of reanimate. Or the one-handed version of that is letting one hand hang there and the other one just gestures like this. And so all of these are, you can mix and match. You don't have to do any of this, but I get so many questions about what to do with my hands that I thought, well, here you go. I've been using this for years with lawyers because they generally have a much more formal environment that they're presenting in, and they kind of have to. Find a parking place for your hands, ready position, and you're good to go. All right, so he told you a little bit about my background. I live in Minneapolis, which has a thriving theater scene surrounding the Guthrie Theater and other national theaters in town. I've directed at Children's Theater. I've worked in the directing staff at the Guthrie. I've been on stage at the Guthrie. Done lots of Shakespearean plays, the Great River Shakespeare Festival. Classically trained actor, went to Northwestern University and Lambda in London to learn all about classical acting, which I've done for years and still do occasionally. This is a picture of a one-man show that I did a few years ago that was the story of teaching high school in a Catholic high school, which I really did. I really taught high school in a Catholic high school as a non-Catholic, which in itself is a funny setup, don't you think? Just that setup alone usually gets people to say, I want to listen to that story. So I taught in this Catholic high school for 4 years and had so many wild experiences doing that. I was having the hardest time like getting it across to people like what happened to me doing this experience of teaching high school as a non-Catholic in a Catholic high school. And so instead of trying to bore people over beers or whatever with the story, I just wrote a one-man show and then performed that. So this is that one-man show, that story of me living through that experience. And I put it on stage and made all the characters alive and got people engaged with that story. So being nothing but just doing acting and directing, alongside that, you do a lot of videos, commercials, instructional films. That's what all actors are doing for money, And I was doing a bunch of videos for Hartford Life Insurance. Now, I'm not a life insurance person. This is about 14 years ago. Don't know anything about life insurance, but I'm doing an ear prompt job. So you record it on a tape and put it in your pocket and little ear thing here, and then you speak to the camera with great conviction. Or in this case, it was to like Dave and Susan at their kitchen table. And the scripts were things like, Dave and Susan, hi, I'm John Russell, your life insurance agent. Susan, if Dave were suddenly to become ill or disabled, God forbid, and you were to lose your ability to pay the mortgage, what would you do? And then, they're staring at her, and she goes, I don't know, get a life insurance policy, I suppose. And so that was the kind of videos they were. And so I didn't know anything about life insurance, but I was able to do it in a convincing way. So they sent this thing around the country, these videos, to teach the sales team what's in the presentation, how to handle objections, things like that was the content. But the managers would say, and while you're doing it, can you be like that guy in the video? Because he's really convincing. So at the shoot for the third one of these things, the VP of marketing comes up to me and he says, they're sending this around and you are so convincing in these videos that we'd like you to come to our London convention of our top performers, our top sales guys, and teach them about being convincing like you are in the video. Would you like to do that? Now, at that point, I had never done anything like that in my life. I had taught theater a lot. I had been an actor and director and everything, but I had never taught anybody outside theater about using those skills. So he asked me that question, and as convincingly as I could, I looked him straight in the eye and said, yes, I'd like to do that. Yes, I would. And I didn't think it would ever happen, but then a few months later, they called again. I developed this curriculum for life insurance agents based on performance skills and went to London, and it worked really pretty well. And they started sending me all around the country teaching their life insurance guys about delivery of the presentation in a way that was engaging. So that's how it started. And I thought, I think there's more people that can use these skills too. So I started to work outside life insurance and work with many, many sales, a lot of financial people, business leaders, sales and marketing, and then most recently, the last 6 years or so, trial attorneys, which is a huge piece of what I do now. This is a good example of just a story fragment that he then kind of starts talking about why it's important. And I think remember to discipline yourself. Oh, hello. To challenge yourself to say, can I get the point across by the telling of the story, rather than sort of telling a piece and then telling everybody why I told that story was important. So I would like in this one, if there were more details about the guy who dressed in the uniform, and tell us more about what happened to him at the office to make the secretary, the receptionist, whoever was, a character who says something rather than, sort of the narrator doing all that work for him. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. Start as early as possible with concrete and give them the abstract afterwards. It's counterintuitive. We want to say, here's the concept, and then here's the story. But I think in his case, would have worked better if he had just said, I want to tell you, here's a customer that had a problem, and here's what happened. We had this guy, and go through all of the things that happened to that guy. That's concrete, real world stuff. And then afterwards say, after you've told the whole story, say, it's important to have branding, it's important to have, and that's now to the conceptual level, and we now have a context that we can put it in. The reason the beginning is, I don't want to say boring, but it's not quite as engaging, is because we don't have any context for why he's telling us this stuff. And I would shorten it. He could shorten that to like barely anything and then go right to his story. So he's first, so the first person always gets all the main critique. And then everybody gets freaked out going, I'm not going to do that. But too bad, because it's already in the can, so ha-ha. Couple little things on just the presenting. You can see the cropping is here, so his hands are tending to go in and out of frame, which is a little bit awkward. I would just crop it to like here, or have him keep his hands up here the whole time, which when you're doing it feels really awkward because you don't usually stand like this. But it would, in the framing of that would work, and we wouldn't even notice that it's sort of in a little bit of an awkward place for him.